Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today for our fourth webinar event in our sustainability series. The Center for Sustainable Energy and Environmental Engineering proudly sponsors all of our events in the summer series. Again, this is our fourth event. We will have one more on September 9th, Best Practices for Industrial Waste Management. Registration is still open. I'm sorry, I'm allowing everybody in as we're talking here. If you're joining us for the first time, our mission at the center is to provide scholarly and applied research and consultancy for sustainable energy development and natural resource conservation through public awareness of renewable energy technology and natural resources. We focus on research and workforce training. And we establish partnerships with businesses and organizations in the industry to foster efforts to benefit North Carolina communities. We also have EPA grant funding through the Pollution Prevention Program, where we provide energy and lean assessments to manufacturers, mostly in automotive, food and beverage, fabrication, sectors of manufacturing in North Carolina. We provide workshops and on-site training, one-day training on lean and green energy management and environmental management. So today we will be discussing solar energy and how we can plug North Carolina energy industries into the sun. Our presenters today, we are very fortunate to have with us from the North Carolina Sustainable Energy Association, Daniel Brookshire. He works with the association, to advance the mission, of the association through evidence-based education and engagement in North Carolina decision makers and energy consumers. He's the regulatory and policy manager, and as such, he monitors and researches and develops informed and credible responses to clean energy related issues in North Carolina Utilities Commission, the General Assembly, and local governments. He draws upon his background in multiple sectors of clean energy to advocate on behalf of the clean energy industry in ways that improve the economy and environment of North Carolina. He's a graduate of Appalachian State and received his master's from UNC Chapel Hill in city and regional planning. And we thank you, Daniel, for being here with us today. Next, we will hear from Wendy Fleener from Duke Energy. She is the manager of products and services of Duke's Clean Energy Group. Her and her team develop, implement, and manage programmatic solutions to help customers reach their sustainability goals and support the advancement of renewable energy. Thank you, Wendy, again for being here with us today. And then lastly, we will hear from Julio Rovi from DDS Associates Incorporated. He's a consulting engineer that has worked in the energy efficiency realm for over 30 years in 18 different countries in the U.S. Clients in the state and local governments know him as the senior technical resource for the EPA Energy Star for commercial and industrial buildings. He's currently the director for market development at GS Associates. His work is about bridging the needs of his clients with the capabilities of the company related to energy efficiency and financing, codes, and demand side management. For his projects, he provides guidance on subject matter as a subject matter expert in the convergence of energy policy, engineering, and social sciences. And over time, he has worked on building engineering, financing, program design, labeling, conference facilitation, outreach, and support voluntary programs. And he's always available to brainstorm And he has also co-authored the Panama Sustainable Building Code and EPA's Energy Star Cash Flow Opportunity Calculator. So thank you, Julio, for also being here with us today. So at this time, we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Daniel. Thank you again, Daniel, for being with us today.
Thank you. Share my presentation. All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Daniel Brookshire. I'm the Regulatory and Policy Manager with the North Carolina Sustainable Energy Association. And today I'm going to give you an overview of the solar energy industry in North Carolina and focusing specifically on some of the key policies that have really influenced the growth of the industry in the state over the last decade. So to start with, a little bit about my association, the North Carolina Sustainable Energy Association. We are a clean energy advocacy membership organization that includes individuals, businesses, local governments, and nonprofit members. And we work on all clean energy issues, including renewable energy, energy efficiency, and electric vehicles. And we actually have two of our board members with us today, Tarek and Julio, are on our board, and we work frequently with Wendy. So it's I'm in good company today. So thank you for having me. To give you a little context about the topic at hand, solar in North Carolina, we are one of the top 10 solar states in the whole country. It's sometimes surprising to folks. We used to be number 2 for quite a few years, but Texas has since surpassed us. And Florida, as you'll see here on this slide, is right on our heels. But we have, if you count all of North Carolina in terms of, there's going to be a discrepancy here between this slide and the next, but these are all in direct current ratings. So this is, we have about 7 gigawatts DC of solar in North Carolina. And a lot of that, most of that capacity is utility scale. So, solar farms, larger solar systems contributes to that total.
Middle school as well as the high school.
A little feedback on the line. Okay. So with the solar farms, a lot of those are in eastern North Carolina. So you'll see here a map. One thing, North Carolina's has a very regulated electricity system still today. And one of the things required under the regulations are to file with the Utilities Commission information about your solar system. So that enables my association to go and track and see where all these systems are developing. So we do try to keep an up-to-date map on our website, which is energync.org if you're curious. But I like to show this graphic from our website because you see, the larger circles here represent those larger utility scale solar farms, and those are primarily in the eastern part of the state, so right around the ECU area and further east, where land is flat and relatively available, or has been historically. So if you convert this previous slide, what I said to alternating current, so the rating at the solar inverters, we have about 5.6 gigawatts of solar energy, and that consists of almost 20,000 different systems. And a lot of the numbers of those systems are the smaller residential or commercial systems. So they make up a lot of the numbers of systems, but not a lot of the capacity, if that makes sense. All right, so to kind of give you a picture of how the electricity generation in North Carolina has changed over the last decade, this is the total generation of electricity by fuel source. So you'll see over the past decade, we went from being primarily a nuclear and coal state for our electricity to one that is much more diverse in terms of, you see the coal generation declining over the last decade, the natural gas generation increasing, nuclear staying about the same, and then you see at the bottom there that yellow strip, solar growing doing a steady growth over that time as well. Now, to give you a little perspective on the economic impact side of solar energy. So we worked with RTI International earlier this year to do an economic impact analysis of clean energy development in North Carolina. And we found when you consider energy efficiency, solar, even the Amazon wind farm, the main wind farm we have in the state, all of these different clean energy investments, it represents a $40.3 billion economic impact to North Carolina since 2007. And to break that down into kind of an annual direct investment, if you focus on just renewable energy project investment, which is primarily all solar for North Carolina, we went from about 26 million in 2007 to over 1.6 billion in 2020. So over 62% increase, or 62 times increase, excuse me. and this type of economic development is a bit unique. It goes primarily to those more rural areas that can accommodate the renewable energy facilities, not the urban counties. So you'll see the top 5 counties in terms of clean energy investment are relatively rural and mostly eastern North Carolina counties. So you have Duplin, Robeson, Halifax, Edgecombe, and Cumberland. And if you look at, in addition to that direct investment, if you look at terms of increases in tax revenue, local tax revenue for these counties, you have a significant increase from before to after the solar was developed. So we did a study, I think this is from last year, our most recent one, where we look at the property parcels before and after a solar farm was developed. And to give you an example here, for Bladen County, if you added up all the parcels of land, the taxes that land was generating before solar was developed in the year before, it amounted to about 32,000 for the year. But then after the solar facilities were developed, it generated over $500,000 in additional tax revenue. So that's new tax revenue to pay for local facilities, local school systems, local upgrades to your county commissioner's building, whatever. So that is another welcome benefit from these facilities. So how do we get to number 2 and number 3 in the nation for solar development? Well, North Carolina had some historically strong renewable energy policies that made us a leader, not just in the Southeast, but in the country as well. And one of those top policies, which was developed in 2007, one of the reasons that we pegged that economic report to 2007 was our Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Portfolio Standard, or REPS. And that requires our utilities like Duke Energy to meet a certain amount of their electricity from renewable resources or energy efficiency. And because of the success of solar and other renewable technologies and energy efficiency, we've had no trouble really meeting those requirements over the past, over a decade now. There are some carve-outs for animal waste to energy requirements that the technology didn't quite develop as rapidly as the legislation had envisioned. So those requirements haven't quite been met yet. But the solar and the general renewables and the energy efficiency requirements have been consistently met and well below the cost caps. We also used to have a in-state renewable energy tax credit that expired in 2015. We, of course, have had and still have, to an extent, the federal investment tax credit in renewable energy, which is right now 26% of the system cost and drops over the next few years. North Carolina also has a personal property tax abatement for solar systems. That's still in place. And historically, we had, I don't want to get too in the weeds here, but we had some regulations that would offer fixed contracts for solar facilities. So that helped the industry to develop, especially in the earlier in the 2010s. Another major piece of legislation that Wendy's really going to dive into the specific programs here, but I'll just mention it briefly, is House Bill 589 that was passed in 2017. And that did a number of things. It established a competitive procurement program for Duke Energy to acquire additional solar facilities. It could be other renewable types of energy, but so far it's been just solar and some storage systems. And I'm going to let Wendy really dive into some of there's some specific solar programs in there that the legislation called out as well. And we have worked with Wendy and others over the years to get those programs off the ground. So in total, this law was envisioned to get about 6,800, depending on how it all pencils out, to over 7,350 megawatts of solar in the Duke Energy territories by 2022. So that legislation is still having an impact in North Carolina today. Another recent policy development for solar in North Carolina was Governor Cooper's Executive Order 80, which instructed several cabinet agencies to develop clean energy plans and clean energy related plans. The main one by the Department of Environmental Quality, the Clean Energy Plan, set a goal for North Carolina to reduce our electric power greenhouse gas emissions by 70% below 2005 levels by 2030, and then attain carbon neutrality by 2050. I was involved in there's a long, almost a years long stakeholder process to help develop the report. And one of the main recommendations and goals is to foster a long-term energy affordability and price stability for our residents and businesses by modernizing the regulatory and energy planning processes. So that policy or that plan, you can Google it and find some of the top level recommendations and goals that are in that plan. That has really generated a lot of stakeholder involvement and collaboration around solar issues in the last couple of years. And lastly, before I turn to Wendy, I'm going to give you just some expected trends in the solar space in the coming years. I think we're going to increasingly see solar facilities be paired with energy storage. So like this picture here, a large-scale battery storage system. This is in Brunswick County. I think we'll see some type of modernizing of our energy regulatory system. We've had, basically the same regulated monopoly system for a century, basically. So I think we will see some updates to that in the coming years. I think we will continue to innovate and remain a leader in clean energy, especially in our region. But like I said, our neighbors are really catching up. So I think you have seen a lot of solar being developed in South Carolina to our south and increasingly in Virginia to our north. So, we're number 3 now, but, we might fall further in the rankings as more southeastern states get their industries up and running. I think we will see some rapid price declines continue over the next few years in both the residential and commercial areas of solar, and the adoption of new technologies, like I mentioned, like storage. And just one last note on storage, a few years ago, North Carolina did a statewide study with NC State and NC Central and the NC Policy Collaboratory about energy storage options for North Carolina. So if you're interested in further about especially energy storage policy and what that future might hold for North Carolina, I encourage you to take a look at that report. It when it was written, we only had about 1 megawatt of battery storage. We have a bit more since then, but it's still it's still not nearly to the extent of the capacity that the solar numbers I showed you earlier. So that is an area we expect to grow significantly over this next decade. So with that, I will thank you, and my contact information is here, and I'm going to turn it over to Wendy next.
Thanks, Daniel, for that. I just want to ask if there's any questions from anybody specifically relating to policy or legislation that Daniel could answer for you right now. If you just want to unmute and ask your question or send it to me in the side chat.
I was interested, how much more does solar cost for the power than, say, natural gas power?
That's a good question. I don't have the exact numbers right on top of me. They are quite competitive right now on a per kilowatt hour basis. I've seen some natural gas futures prices that, historically, last few years, natural gas has been really declining in price, but it seems like recently they're starting to tick up a bit. So I don't have that exact number right in front of me, but I know they're very close.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, thank you again, Daniel. We appreciate that. If you have if you think of any other specific questions for Daniel, his contact information is available on his presentation, which all the presentations, again, are available under the webinar files. If you have any trouble accessing them, just please let me know. I will get them to you as soon as possible. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Wendy with Duke Energy. Thanks again for being with us today, Wendy.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you, Daniel. You did a great kind of laying kind of the landscape of what we have here in North Carolina. And thank you, everybody that's joined the call. So all of us, on behalf of all the speakers, always welcome the opportunity to talk to folks in the community. So I'll kind of move past this. This does have my contact information. What I wanted to do today, as kind of Daniel alluded to, is I really want to kind of now step through. So now you guys kind of know, if you think of the high level, kind of what is going on in the state, what are some of the things that are possible. And so what I want to take you guys through is some of the actual programmatic solutions, so how our customers can meet their needs. So as I'm sure you can imagine, and many of you on the phone, everybody's kind of looking for ways where they can either meet renewable goals, carbon-free goals, and also want to know about what we're doing. So, Duke Energy is on this journey as well. So not only do we have these programmatic solutions that, either have come out of legislation, we have programs that we proactively are offering, because we are working towards being 50% carbon-free by 2030 and then net zero by 2050. And so the solutions I am going to take you guys through today are focused on our large business customers, but we do also have, of course, offerings for customers of all types, so residential, small, medium business, and then the large business customers. So if after the call, there was something maybe particular to your residents that you have a question about, please feel free to let me know. So the first opportunity I wanted to speak to you guys about is Green Source Advantage. And so this is one of the programs that came out of HB 589. And this was really created as a way to help a large business customer really accomplish or kind of pick off a large amount of their goals. So if you kind of think about, there's a couple of kind of key ways where customers can get this renewable or carbon-free energy. So I think what most people kind of think of is you can, put some panels on your building, right? You can put them on the building, you can put them on the ground, but from either space constraints, the roof may not be in great condition, or just simply the math of the production you could get off the panels versus what you need to get your goals may not be attainable. And so what Green Source Advantage is you're actually partnering not only with us, but it would be a renewable supplier. So Duke Energy is not going to own the facility. And kind of as we go through this, I'm going to just assume it's solar. But you would be working with a third party of your choosing to kind of bring a new facility online. And so one of the terms you'll often hear used is called additionality. And so that kind of shows, without your support as a customer, this project would not be in existence. And so, the customer has the opportunity to negotiate kind of the terms of the contract. And so that would be, what you are willing to pay to bring the facility online, how long you want the contract term to be, which would be up to 20 years, as well as, you talked about what you paid, but everybody wants to make sure they're getting credit for that renewable energy. And so we actually have a couple of different choices of how you can get compensated. And so, you know, a lot of flexibility here. You know, it does require partnership. I work very closely with one of our customers that are participating in this program kind of on the front end, because, you know, what you would need to do if this was a path you wanted to go down, some of those first steps would be doing an RFI, an RFP in the market, because we need to identify these potential projects for you, because again, it's a three-party arrangement. The key thing you'll see here at the bottom, and this may be a new term to folks, but with this, you are going to obviously retain the right to the renewable attributes, or the RECs. You may hear this referred to as renewable energy certificates or renewable energy credits. And this is kind of what you need to make these claims that you have kind of done X in the renewable space. And so kind of an illustration for you is, you know, if you think about it, it's a sunny day today, the panels are generating energy and turning the meters, or the wind turbines are going. For every 1,000 kWh, or 1 megawatt hour, so that's kind of the equivalent, a REC is generated. So the turbines are going, so kind of think of like a piece of Velcro. And then you can also, though, pull it apart. So you've got this renewable energy, the turbines are going, but then the RECs are being created for every 1,000 kWh. Those can be either bundled together, which is here at GSA, or the RECs can be taken apart. And I'll talk a little bit about some unbundled options a little bit further on. But the RECs are what you need to be able to make those claims. So you're getting the renewable energy as well as this, and there's some potential for kind of some financial opportunity. Kind of keep going here, just some of the caveats that customers may want to know about. So this is available for either new or existing loads. And so what I mean by this, if this is a customer that already is operating in the state, but you know, there may be customers that are looking to move into North Carolina. Hopefully all of us would agree it's a great place to live and do business. And so, you know, if a customer is looking to move into this area, they would also be eligible to apply. Currently under the program, a customer can subscribe to 125% of their peak demand. Daniel kind of mentioned there is some legislation that's currently pending right now, which is called HB 951. And so part of that, there could be some changes, you know, in the future with the program. One of the things that is written for Green Source Advantage, that instead of the program being capped at 125% of your peak demand, a customer could actually match their energy use. So, which is a big change and something folks are excited about, because if you look at what 125% of your demand today would be for a solar facility, that's going to only get you a portion of the way. Let's just say 40% of your goals. Versus if you wanted to get to 100%, you could do a larger system that's going to help you get there without having to do some other options. You can kind of see here, it's for our largest business customers. So it's for folks that are at least 1 megawatt, or if they have a variety of locations, it can be an aggregate of 5. Another kind of key thing is that this program is not subsidized by any non-participants, so which is important. So the customers, just because those folks that want to participate, they don't want everybody to be paying for their participation. So there are some fees that are required to kind of cover the cost of myself and others on the team to kind of make this program happen. So there's a one-time $2,000 application fee, and then kind of ongoing, there's a administrative fee. And then you'll have the new line items on your bill. The product charge, which is that negotiated price that you guys would get to make with the developer, and then the bill credit of your choosing. So it rides on your Duke Energy bill. Nothing changes with your existing rate structure with Duke Energy. So that's kind of important. I get questions about that. Well, am I going to have to talk to my large account manager, and how is that going to affect, you know, what I'm doing today? And it doesn't, because when you think about it, you know, this facility is not going to be built on your site. And so your meters kind of today, as they are going to be running, this is just layered on top of your existing bill. So it is a first come, first served program. So this is actually our second iteration of this green tariff program. We had a pilot program a few years back that's called Green Source Rider. That program, there are participants, and it's kind of just, you know, obviously the facilities are online. And so this new 600 megawatts came out of HB 589. Apologies on the numbers. And so at that capacity too, there were some specific carve outs for different groups. A total of 350 is currently on reserve for military and UNC institutions. And as of today, I've got right under 35 megawatts available for any business customer to subscribe to. So somebody seeing this would be like, well, Wendy, what's going to happen next? And so, I can't say exactly, but if you were to ask me, I obviously believe, and, the company is very committed to kind of making sure that we continue to have these opportunities available for our customers. And so I do believe that this is not going to be the last one of these programs. It's going to be, just as this is the second one, there's going to be continue to be new variations and new types of ways for you to meet your goals. So do not worry. Kind of contractual how this happens. So there's kind of from a legal standpoint, there is a 3-party agreement that happens with Duke Energy, yourself as the customer and the developer, as well as the PPA, the power purchase agreement that happens between the developer and Duke Energy. You may be curious, who participates in this type of program? So I can share there's 4 customers in North Carolina that have been public about their participation. Names I think all of you guys would recognize. And as you can kind of see there in their public statements, they really see this as a key way of getting where they need to be in the next couple of years. So moving on to another regulated program that we have that was part of that latest legislation is a very popular program, our North Carolina Solar Rebate Program. You guys may have heard about this. It typically has gotten kind of some press anytime folks are getting money. So this is kind of related when Daniel was talking about, ways that really North Carolina has been advancing their solar installations. Programs like this rebate program directly kind of help with that. So this was a 5-year program. It launched in 2018 and it runs through the end of next year, 2022. I will tell you it's been very popular. And so it has sold out every year. So it was a total of 100 megawatts that was split amongst the 5 years. And it has had some changes over time. So it used to be kind of a first come, first serve. So there was allotments each year. Now the program is giving away capacity twice a year and is based on a random selection versus kind of if you think back to Ticketmaster when we were going to concerts where everybody was kind of pushing the button right at 9:01. We've had some enhancements for the program to make sure it's it's equitable and fair for everybody. And so, there will be new capacity that will be opening up again next year in January and then in July. Part of this program, I will tell you, there is a nonprofit carve out and that capacity is available. And the definition of nonprofit is actually anybody that's tax exempt. So, you may think of, not only kind of 501Cs, but that could be school systems, cities may qualify, etc. And throughout this presentation, one thing to mention that you guys will have, I have links to either the public website or if there's a contact person for the program. That way, if you have any questions, you have, of course, not only me, but where you can get to the specific details of what was most interest to you. So the next thing I wanted to kind of share with you guys, and this may be a new concept, and so, Duke Energy is obviously a regulated utility. So I covered some of the programs that have came out through the Utilities Commission legislation. And so there are also, though, non-regulated offerings. And so what that actually means is, so these are offerings that are available. They are not governed by the Utilities Commission. They are also things that could be available for other suppliers or companies throughout the state. And so, with that in mind, I wanted to talk about a couple of, those other types of ways where you can meet your sustainability goals, either through us, through a non-regulated affiliate, which is Duke Energy Sustainable Solutions, or again, there could be others in the state that could help you with that. So the first way here, so we kind of talked about kind of the offsite generation. We talked about kind of a financial mechanism of how folks can get compensated. But then you may ask yourself, well, what if we want to just actually have something on our property? So there's 2 ways in North Carolina where someone can do that as a business customer. So you obviously can purchase the site. So, if you're somebody that has the capital, you can, have something on your kind of land. So it could be on your roof, you could be on your ground, or something that's becoming more popular would be a parking canopy. Compensation is kind of how folks often think about it, kind of the economics. I know folks asked about that. 1 megawatt, up to 1 megawatt in the state is eligible for net metering. And so that's kind of the, currently it's full retail rate. So you would get compensated for anything you don't use and send back to Duke Energy. North Carolina, through HB 589, also became an approved state for solar lessors. And so, kind of think about this. This is very similar to kind of leasing a car, right? So you may not have the X number of dollars you want to pay for it up front. And you may not want to do the maintenance, right? So maybe if you get a lease for your car, they're going to do all of your oil changes or rotate your tires. So it's very similar here, where you can still take advantage of having something built on your property. Again, this one is up to 1 megawatt because it would be something you would net meter. But instead of having that upfront capital, you could actually then pay a set monthly fee for up to 20 years for the life of the contract. So that is something that's also available to folks. And then the last option I just wanted to kind of talk to you guys. So if you think back to kind of first part of the presentation when I talked to you about being bundled solutions. So you're getting the energy and the RECs. So those would be the green source advantage. Those would be if you would do anything on site where you're kind of procuring that own generation and RECs. There is a concept, and it's really becoming, I find, more popular. I'm having more customers that are asking me about it, and it would be unbundled RECs. And so what this is, if you think back to kind of the Velcro situation, so you can kind of parse off the energy for these renewable energy certificates. And so there are renewable suppliers throughout the country that are willing to not use their RECs, so not make claim. And so if you think of kind of like the stock market, it's not kind of as robust or anything like that, but basically it is, there's a platform or a trading kind of universe of where, you can be connected with suppliers that have these RECs they're willing to sell. And then you can purchase them and have them retired on your behalf. And so that way you can kind of claim that renewable energy. And so, this is an option that's either great to kind of fill in any sort of goals that you may have. It's also, a no long-term commitment. It's a very quick thing to do. If you look to install solar, that may take, let's just say, 2 years. If you're kind of thinking about the process, doing something like this to meet your 2021 goals may take less than 2 weeks. It's also a very low cost option. And so it's just something I wanted to kind of share with you as a way that folks are continuing to kind of look at what they may want to do on this renewable journey. And with that, that is the last slide I had, but I'm happy to answer any questions that the audience may have.
Thank you, Wendy.
Sure, thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Wendy? Programs through Duke Energy or any of the topics that she covered?
Hi, Wendy. Thank you for the presentation. This is Laura Combs. And I'm wondering if you have a crystal ball that might tell you what happens with the nonprofit rebate after 2022, because I know there's growing awareness of it and more interest of it, and that is so critical for the nonprofit community. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I think you're meaning, is there going to be a future iteration of the rebate program?
Yes, thank you. At least for nonprofits.
Yeah, so a couple of points. So the first thing I will say, how the program was designed, so any capacity that is not used by the end of 2022, so let's just say there is the nonprofit capacity that remains, that is going to be available in 2023 for any customer. So it kind of becomes a first come, first serve for residential, commercial, or nonprofits. And so that's kind of under that piece of legislation, how that total 100 megawatts will get distributed. So there is not currently kind of proposed or on the table a future iteration of the rebate program. I definitely can understand, nonprofits, I think sometimes the funding is difficult, right? Only, from an approval process to how are we going to pay for it. And so I definitely can appreciate kind of the need or the interest there. And so I would just say, we'll have to wait and see. At this point, there is not something, that's on the immediate horizon.
Okay, thank you for that. And that's my plug for nonprofits in the future. So thank you.
No, I definitely understand that. One other thing I will just kind of share, because it was on one of Daniel's slides that somebody could have noticed that wasn't on there, is community or shared solar. So there was a program that came out of HB 589 At this time, though, we do not have any facilities available for subscription. So if you kind of think about when I talked about Green Source Advantage, this would be more of a one-to-one relationship. Carajo's, corporation is partnering with Wendy's solar facility and Duke Energy. So what community or shared solar is kind of, if you think about the name, is, there would be a facility and then Carajo could tell me, all right, well, I want to subscribe to X%, and we already kind of know the cost. So it's a little bit different kind of on the front end of how that arrangement. Under the program design, the projects do have to come in at something called avoided cost. And so basically that's what it would cost, or Duke Energy would have to spend to bring that same amount of energy online. And so far we have not had any projects that have come in at that price. And so maybe they'll program in the future. So also with the current legislation, there is some opportunity with some suggested programmatic changes that we think that could be a viable option, which of course nonprofits could be an option for that as well. So I would say stay tuned. I think what you're hearing from me today, if I was to talk exactly this time next year, I feel very confident that I would have, a new story to tell.
Great. Anybody else have a question for Wendy? Okay. So thank you again very much, Wendy, for being with us today and for all that information. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Julio with GDS Associates. Julio is going to talk to us about energy efficiency, specifically relating to solar.
Would you please confirm that you can see my screen?
We can.
Okay, fantastic. So good afternoon, and thank you all for joining. This is a great opportunity. I'm going to change a little bit the dynamic, moving from sort of policy and program opportunities to a more general point, which has to do with the connection between solar and energy efficiency. As Kara mentioned earlier, I've been working on energy efficiency topics for many years and in many countries. And it is certainly where huge opportunities remain. And the main point with the connection of these topics is that this is all in the context of a broader conversation. It's a bigger conversation. The conversation is about climate, and how this fits into that broader conversation is important to acknowledge. Other things have to do with why should we care, and how do we understand the connection between this clean energy or renewable energy or solar, whichever you are working on, and primary energy and the whole greenhouse gas bit. And of course, I will make the plug that energy efficiency is usually more cost effective than solar or renewables. But today, the synergistic effects are really what is the topic at hand and what we need to keep an eye on. So, as a matter of context, I would say that the big picture is about this paradigm shift that's happening right now, as governments, initially state and local, but now the federal government is understanding the costs and challenges with climate change and the weather impacts to property and well-being of people in the U.S. and around the world. So the thing is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and energy efficiency is one of the simple ways to reduce emissions. Of course, there's also capturing it, which there are different ways of doing it. Some of them involve nature, others are being developed. There are more than 200 projects right now trying to look at carbon capture air to air or in other mechanisms. But the fourth item in sort of my list of sequence here is fuel switching, and favoring forms of electrification from clean sources, and this is where solar really shines. And ultimately, we want to use it to displace other forms of generation, or we want to store it somehow. The point is to try to avoid greenhouse gases. And what is very nice about it is that the economics are starting to make much more sense as the cost of renewables keeps going down. Even though the economics have been in place for many years, when you take into account the damages and the loss of human life related to climate change. At the end, this is all about people. What are the options for people to have the quality of life, the security, the well-being that we hope for ourselves and those that follow us, and ultimately the decision of how do we provide this energy with the least amount of greenhouse gases? What are the choices that we may have? So we want to care about energy efficiency because it's climate change thing is real, and renewables can't really do it alone. There's going to have to be a combination of many things in order for us to attain the goals. And there's a lot of synergy, as I said, between energy efficiency and renewable energies, particularly solar. In that, whenever you're going on a solar design, whether it's on site on a house or a business or community solar or utility grade solar, somebody has to calculate the demand and the energy in order to size it. So ultimately, right sizing the load and the storage is really critical to make the numbers make sense. As it moves from small settings to larger settings, then there are other grid-related considerations, such as making the grid more robust, especially in the endpoints of distribution grids that tend to have the most challenges of intermittency or quality of energy. At the end of the day, there's the engineering that has to go into making these systems work reliably and transparently to the user. Closely related to that, it's the topic of the cost. What's the initial cost and life cycle cost? And of course, those also depend on the sizing. Installation costs are critical in a purchase decision, and typically these are going to be done through some sort of financial mechanism. So financing is quite important, and the financiers are going to be looking at this life cycle costs and rates of return and things of that nature. Ultimately, the broad adoption of controls and grid-enabled technology will also depend on cost, and that's the direction that we're trending to. But for those of you that do install renewable energy installations, or solar installation in particular, or promoting solar, there's the issue of branding. People and companies pursue a good name because and avoid bad press because many people are skittish, and there's a fairly important source of disinformation that is out there about the merits or the risks and the opportunities. And so you want to make sure that you're associating solar with good attributes such as energy efficiency or energy security and cost effectiveness. There will be examples over your life that where a project, a solar project was installed on a facility that was grossly inefficient in energy. And it turns out that it reduced the purchase of a certain amount of energy from the utility, but ultimately the energy is being wasted. It's becoming heat and escaping to the atmosphere without any practical use, just because of those inefficiencies. Same thing with energy security. Should there be a weather event, North Carolina, we're talking about hurricanes and storms and flooding. It's not atypical to be without power a certain amount of time. And so this is where, again, solar shines, pun intended, in the sense that this is a solution that is worthwhile considering, and it makes a lot more sense when the load is small. the fourth point here is ethical matters. With energy efficiency, we will help curb greenhouse gases, and there's going to be a global benefit towards that. It does contribute, and it is part of one's share of reducing demand and energy requirements. Ultimately, if you are in the technical fields, in energies, engineering, or in a utility role, ultimately you want to make sure that you're optimizing demand and energy delivery, because those are the things that get paid for. A good name for solar means jobs also and workforce stability. There are plenty of documents that are talking about this as a way of, creating good paying jobs and having the capability to be self-sufficient with certain forms of energy beyond the established ones that exist. And also important opportunities for diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is also a growing topic of interest. But I'm not really saying anything that you probably have heard before. I have two quotes here. One of them is from 2007, and the other one is from last year. And there were references to this even older than this 2007. But basically what they mean, they say, and they have said, and they've been trying to, drill into everybody's head, is that efficiency of renewable resources are synergistically able to work together for clean and secure energy availability, and renewables cut emissions. So if efficiency helps demand growth, renewables cut emissions. So those are things that are very key. More recently, as organizations have been moving to green buildings and the growing concept of net zero buildings, I found this very interesting quote from a scholar by the name of Mustafa Ismaili Shayan, where he's saying that net zero building is generally described as an extremely energy efficient building in which the residual electrical demand is provided by renewable energy. So that again points to this combination that we're looking to do, which is to reduce demand as much as possible, and whatever then it's satisfied with renewable energy. Solar power being the most readily available and ever increasingly more cost effective to be used. So the other thing that I will say it, and it's I believe this, is that solar panels are and wind farms are more interesting to people than energy efficiency, because you see the solar panel, or you see the battery case, or you see the wind and the wind farms and the turbines and the whole thing. Energy efficiency is not that interesting. It's like you replace the washing machine with another washing machine, or a refrigerator with another refrigerator, or you put insulation and you never see it. So let's acknowledge this, that solar panels and renewable energy are sexier. So we do have to go through the extra mile to make sure that people understand why this is important. So I will quickly now go through, what is the path to right-sizing equipment. And, in this simple image of a room, the point is that this conversation is about heat transfer, okay? So you have rain, you have the sun, you have wind, you have solar radiation that comes through the glass, hitting opaque surfaces such as the roof and and you have convection of wind in the outside, and you have long wave radiation that would be escaping. Once the roof is heated, you have conduction going into space on both the roof and the floor and the walls. And there's also conduction through doors and windows. Ultimately, there's also some thermal mass lag as buildings remain warm even into the evening. So all of these heat gains contribute to having a more heat inside the space or heat flows that have to be addressed. In the winter, it's heat loss. In the summer, it's a heat gain. And this balance puts us sort of out of kilters because it's not synchronized with, comfort. So all of these things then sort of translate into how the building works, and in this context, here's a simpler diagram. Ultimately, there's the sun, which creates the weather and creates the wind. So all that goes as energy into the building, put their radiation. It goes through the building envelope. And then besides this energy that goes into the building from nature, you have the commercial energy that you purchase, electricity, natural gas, and any of the other fuels. You have people and equipment also providing some of that internal heat. Now, the reason why it's important to talk a little bit about this commercial energy is because we do have to also bear in mind, remind ourselves, most of you probably know this, that out of all of the energy, energy is transformed, it's not created, it doesn't disappear. But basically we start with primary energies from nature, solar, hydro, wind, coal, gas, oil, and other forms, radioactive materials. Those things are called primary energy, and they come from nature. All of it, some of it, makes it into secondary energy, primarily for our economies. It's mostly electricity, gas, such as natural gas or propane. If it's for transportation, it's going to be other forms of hydrocarbons that are refined from oil. But ultimately, what we're really interested is in the end use. So what we want is light and comfort, heat, air conditioning, that kind of thing. We don't really care for any of the other intermediate things, but we have to buy them. And that's the reason why commercial energies are interesting. And so what we want to do is we want to buy the light, and we don't really want to buy the heat loss, right? So whether we're talking about lighting or comfort, electronics, communications, internet, what we are thinking is that we want the service, and I'm going to call those energy services. But ultimately, what we want to be able to do is reduce the amount of fossil energy needed to create this electricity that we really crave for. Try to capture, if we can, replace it by fuel substitutions, and moving particularly towards renewable electricity. And if that's not possible, to figure out how we can capture it. So here's this same information, but placed in a different way, which is again, if we look at this diagram, on my screen it looks slightly light purple, but if this is your building, ultimately in your building, your facilities, what you want is the end uses, okay? But nature gives you from the exterior solar radiation, temperature, wind, particulates. Those hit the envelope, and they make it into your space as either heat gain or heat loss, okay? The building itself also has internal heat loads, because those end uses, like comfort and others, as we spoke, if the equipment is inefficient, everything that is not converted into an actual energy service, whatever doesn't become light, becomes heat from the light fixture, or becomes heat from your transformer, or your modem, or your stove. All of those forms of heat get distributed into the interior space. And to satisfy them, you had to buy electricity and natural gas, which came from primary energy. And if you also look into this, there are losses in every single one of these stages. And the reason this is important is because these are the losses that we are not benefiting from. We're just throwing all that heat to the environment. And part of that, in order to attain it, we needed to generate power or convert natural gas or oil into the types of forms of energy that we could use. Here in more detail is one of the concepts I use, which is about managing these heat flows. This is just the same diagram, a little bit more detailed in terms of what the internal loads are for things that we do. Cooking, lighting, motors, pumps, controls, electronics. All of those things are what the occupants want, and they want it in the interior space. So you have all of these energy flows, whether you're removing heat or you're adding heat. So with that, I guess the message is you want to use the many ways to reduce load so you can have a right sizing of your solar and renewable energy facilities, because that makes it more cost effective, and it makes a direct contribution to reducing greenhouse gases and meeting some of the challenges, the immediate challenges that we have on climate matters, while at the same time benefiting from the economics and other social benefits associated with clean energy revolution. So with that, that's the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to entertain any questions you may have.
Thanks, Julio. Does anybody have any questions for Julio related to energy efficiency or applications of solar that Julio could answer? Okay. All right. With that, I just wanted to give another final thank you to our speakers for joining us today, Daniel, Wendy, Julio. Information is critical to achieving a 2050 goal of not net neutrality, but carbon neutrality. Sorry. Anyways, so just to kind of wrap everything up for today, we are ending a little early today. Again, everybody's presentations are available under the webinar files, as well as their contact information if you think of any other questions that you may have for them specifically. Again, if you have trouble accessing that, please let me know. I will help you and get that information to you as quickly as possible. Also, you will find under the chat column, there's a link to feedback for today. If you have any feedback that you could give us on how we can improve our webinar series or our future webinars, please fill that out and let us know what we could do to better improve these events that we have. Also, I mentioned in the beginning that we do have EPA grant funding that funds our research projects. Additionally, we also accept donations from anyone that we partner with to help fund some of our student research engagement, community support, scholarships, and other training, face-to-face training that we have on campus, or now that we're opening campus back up, hopefully we'll have more face-to-face training events. So there is a link here in my presentation under the files that you can follow to make donations to the center, and we appreciate all of the support. So again, with that, we thank you very much for joining us today. Our last event will be on September 9th on best practices for industrial waste management. We will wrap up the series then, and again, if there are any questions, please just let us know, and we appreciate your attendance today. Thanks, Haley. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Kara.